Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you to another edition of the Vitalogy podcast. Ryan Paulson,
Josh Rose,
welcome.
it is good to see you, man.
It is really, really good to see you, man. It's good to be together in this room, and it's good to have you joining us. We're so glad that you found us, whether you are with us live, because as I often have to point out, I feel like I'm a little disingenuous at times calling this a podcast. It is a podcast.
It is.
And yet it is also a vidcast. Is that a thing?
Sure. Yeah.
It is not. We're live. Yeah. This is sure. I don't know.
It is now.
It was. They called that a vlog for a few minutes.
That's right.
And then they stopped because that's a weird thing to say. Yeah. And so we don't know what to call it, but this is YouTube. You're on YouTube or Facebook. If you're joining us, you can just look down in the comments and say hi to us. We say hello back to you, and that makes it fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you found us on the Vitalogy podcast, somewhere on the interwebs, on whatever podcast thing you listen to, that's great also. But you just get to listen. But you get to listen at double time, which is nice.
At double time, and you can send questions to questions@efcc.org, and we will answer them anytime.
We will, yes, or at least we will talk about answering them.
That's right.
Because some questions
will respond. Some
questions don't have like a firm answer.
Yeah, not all of them.
Not all. So, in fact, I would argue that that's partly why Jesus asked questions
and answered with questions.
And answered with questions. That's what we'll get to in a little bit, because that came up this week.
It did.
So there's something powerful about questions. I love a good question.
Yeah, you do, don't you? Yeah.
And it is one of these things. There's been people in my life who ask really penetrating questions.
Yes, and I've had people like that too.
Yeah. And I admire them. And sometimes it's random though, or they'll be like out of left field. So, what do you think about penal substitution, or something? That's like what, why, and how did you ask that question?
Totally.
And actually, that's not a good question. It would be much better than that.
Yeah,
I don't feel like I'm quite as good at that.
My spiritual director is great at asking questions and sort of. I think the questions help excavate what's going on in your soul, yes. And he does a great job of that, which is why I love talking to him.
There you go. You go.
Yeah.
Now, the funny thing is, is it you answering the question, or is it you answering around the question?
It's me asking myself the same question. That's the value, right?
Got it.
Wow, that is a good question. Sometimes it's the answer that helps. Sometimes it's the process of thinking the question through.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's good. Well, it's nice being the podcast space is kind of one for some verbal processors.
It is.
That can kind of process on the fly a bit.
Yeah.
And kind of reach back and do those things. And this is where I love doing this with you, Ryan. And I know that our folks at home love digging in a little bit deeper into the messages. And so
we do too.
It absolutely is fun. So we're gonna do that today. We had Mother's Day
on Sunday.
Day. So that means that we're done honoring moms for another 363 days. We're good.
Yes,
right? Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay. I know. Just kidding. Mark says hi. Speaking of honoring a mom's, Mark, would you honor your mom for us?
Yes.
And give her a hug.
Yes.
That'd be great.
It's funny. My kids said, so we have Mother's Day, we have Father's Day. When's Kids Day?
Yes.
And my wife was like, that's every other day.
Yes.
Every other day is Kid Day. Yeah. Yep. So there it is. Yes.
My kids have done the same thing. In fact, I remember them crying in the car on the way to school. It has something to do with going to school, which is never a fun process. But
it's true.
Why isn't there a Kid Day?
Yes.
It just is. It's amazing how selfish these little brats are. Oh, sorry. They might have mostly gotten over that. My youngest can still do that at times. But that's great. Well, Mother's Day is kind of one of the bigger Sundays.
Yeah, I mean, it can be. Time. Yeah, I think depending on the demographic of your church, it can be. Yep.
Yeah.
So, I thought we had a great Sunday.
Great Sunday.
A lot of fun being together, and our creative team put together a great video.
Yes.
So
yes, it was really good. I saw a lot of like former students that were in town, or that came
with their
here
mom
for Mother's Day.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so nothing like a good mom guilt trip to get a kid to go to church.
I did see
great.
Families that normally split up and go to different services at different times, even throughout the day. I saw sitting together as unified wholes, and you could just tell mom was like, this is what I want. I want us to all go to church today and probably go grab brunch afterwards, and to that I say,
I know.
Yes,
I heard
and amen.
I heard at least the junior high numbers were down, which is good.
Yeah.
Because that means that, not for junior high sake, but whatever, that they
came with mom.
Which is
totally
great, which is good.
Totally.
Or it could have been that they were out all night Friday and they were too tired to come to church.
That could be it also.
Which was, I realized later, there's a little bit of a punishment to moms to do
the all-nighter,
overnighter. So our church an overnighter, which I drove the bus for.
Yes.
And stayed up most of the night myself. But that was on Mother's Day weekend.
Yeah.
And so it was
Happy Mother's Day.
I did not notice this, actually, to be very clear. This was not my observation. This was my wife's observation. She said, oh, great. That means I'm going to get two tired people all weekend.
There you go.
And that's what she got.
And you didn't disappoint.
Yeah. No, I pretended well. I pretended to be not tired all weekend long.
Right on. So. Good for you. Good for you.
Greg Hill says that bumper video was fantastic. That was a poem.
Yeah.
Right? Or a spoken word-ish.
Some sort of
statement.
Yep.
It was really beautiful.
Yeah,
really well done. So so let's dive into the message and see where this takes us. I think I have notes as well, and so you have notes.
I do too.
So you
and I'll just start with Mother's Day is hard to preach on.
Yes, I bet. This has got to be.
And for a myriad of different reasons. And usually that's what makes something hard to preach on, is it's not one thing. It's usually a conglomeration of a number of different things converging that make you go, ooh, what do I say on this?
Yeah.
And because I think part of my desire is to preach to the whole congregation.
Yeah.
Right. And so I've told you before and on this show talked about, I've never done a whole series on marriage because it often ostracizes a segment of our church body that already feels a little bit ostracized. And so one of the things we're doing is teaching on marriage in the context of teaching through 1 Corinthians, because it's addressed in the letter of 1 Corinthians. But I want to do my best to preach to the whole. And Mother's Day is another day where I sense that tension of going, okay, do I give a Mother's Day message, meaning I speak directly to moms about moms on motherhood, right? Which I think is dangerous for a man to do anyway. But it also creates some tension within the body in regards to people that want to be moms and aren't, or people even like me who are grieving the loss of their mom.
Yes.
That makes it a challenging situation and just a whole soup of emotions,
My word, I bet.
But that's multiplied out by a few thousand people in our church body. And so, I went into this with a blank slate because next week in 1 Corinthians, we're talking about divorce. So I knew I probably shouldn't give that message on Mother's Day.
Yes.
And
that was wise.
so I knew, all right, we've got a slot here that is essentially a standalone message. What do we want to say to moms? And what do we want to say to the whole church body about being disciples that would specifically apply to moms? And so I just decided to, I chose the story of Hagar in the Old Testament, Genesis chapter 16.
Chose a mom.
But a mom that's in a unique position.
Very unique.
So it goes like against some of the norms of like the nuclear family and all sorts of things like that, right?
Now it's funny you say that, because in the Old Testament, I feel like that's every family goes against.
Correct. Correct.
But in very unique ways, this one does.
Yeah.
I mean, more or less someone living as a single mom.
Single mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or at least she will become one very soon.
Yes.
Yeah. She's either a single mom or a second wife.
Yeah.
So
or
either way.
Sort of a tossed aside.
Totally. Either way.
Yeah.
It is a challenging situation to say the least.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So there's, I I chose this passage because of the way God interacts with her, the way God meets her. And I just love the heart of God that we see come through in this text.
Yeah.
So,
that's great. Well, Amy is saying, by the way, happy birthday. I should have began with that.
Well, thank you.
This yesterday.
Yeah,
yesterday was this guy's
It's old news
birthday.
at this point in time. So am I.
Old. So, well said. Yes. Happy birthday, Amy. Thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you, Amy.
I appreciate that. And she's wondering if we got her email. Maybe was that email at questions?
No, she sent it directly.
Okay, directly. So good. Okay.
I did. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Amy, thank you.
I thought we had a question that I missed. But good. That's awesome. So,
all right. So let me just, I'll summarize the story and then we can sort of jump in.
Love it. Before we do though, the whole day of Mother's Day was honoring the mothering task of raising kids in the sense. We even dedicated babies. I thought that was such a sweet thing.
Yeah, it was
dedicated
sweet.
Families, parents, children.
Yeah.
It was such a neat thing.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Yes. So I just thought that was a nice touch.
So cool.
But okay, sorry. Dive in. Let's go.
All right, I'll give you the 1-minute version. So Abraham gets a promise from God that he's going to be the father of many nations. Yep. He leaves his homeland of Ur on the conviction that God will be good on his promise. He and his wife Sarai are barren. They wait 10 years, don't have any kids, not without effort, but they are not getting pregnant. Yep. They're getting old and not getting pregnant. And so Sarai decides that she's going to take matters into her own hands, has Abraham sleep with her servant, and which was common back in the day. If a wealthy woman couldn't get pregnant, she would have obviously her maidservant sleep with her husband and then essentially raise the child as her own.
Yeah. And I noticed in the text that Abraham doesn't object to that at all.
Abraham does not object to that.
He's not like, whoa, no.
And then he finds himself in the middle of two women who are at odds with each other.
He should have objected to that.
And it wouldn't have been a bad idea. It wouldn't have been. For him to say, and there are some parallels between Adam and Eve and Abram and Sarai, and the way that he doesn't say, no, this is what we should do, and sort of that passive approach. And so there are some parallels there. But we see that Hagar does get pregnant, and Sarai is very upset with her. There's some conflict there, and essentially Hagar leaves, and she's in the wilderness when she encounters God. So, which is often the place people encounter God in Scripture.
Yes.
And it's where Elijah encounters God, and there's this whole idea of the way God meets us in the wilderness in unique ways that weaves its way throughout the Scriptures.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes. And all of a sudden it hit me, okay, Jesus goes there in a sense to be with God, but then that's also where Jesus encounters Satan, right?
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's led by the Spirit.
Exactly. He's full of the Spirit. He's in the Spirit absolutely the whole time. Yeah.
Yeah. So, there's this wonderful imagery that says the angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness. And I love this, layers upon layers of not just the truth that geographically, physically, she was in the wilderness by a spring, but spiritually, she feels dry and she's about to encounter the spring of life.
Yeah, that's right.
And there's all these hints and winks and nods of deeper things going on than she's aware of, and that the reader is intended to go, I see what's going on there. And that is I think, a way that we're invited and called to read the Scriptures that people have for generations, that oftentimes in a post-Enlightenment, very information-driven way of reading the Scriptures, we sometimes miss or dismiss because we go, well, there is a physical reality that is taking place. And we go, sure, but the whole story is about something way deeper.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I love the terminology, though, even this idea of the Spirit of God finding.
Yes.
I don't think it took much searching. So part of me wonders, it's not like, I don't know, the imagery could be, you could think of Spirit, looking, oh, I found,
where in the world did Hagar go?
It's not that. It it may say more about Hagar than it does about the spirit, that like finally he found her in a place where she's ready, or
she's ready. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Interesting.
Well, and then, right. So then the angel of the Lord, which in verse 13, we find out is God, says, Hagar, servant of Sarai, where have you come from and where are you going?
Yeah.
So 2 questions that I think are brilliant questions that God asks this exile, slave, pregnant, single mom in the middle of nowhere probably without a penny to her name. Where have you come from? Where are you going? And I think it's an important question that we should ask ourselves often. Where have I come from? And God, where are you leading me? So,
yeah, that's a powerful question. I mean, and what's it like to be asked that by God? I don't know. What would you answer?
Yeah, she doesn't.
She does, exactly. That's, which is maybe I don't know.
She names her present, right? I'm fleeing from my mistress Sarai, but she doesn't answer where have you been and unpack her pain, and she doesn't answer where she's going and at least give a direction for her hope. She just names, this is where I'm at right now.
Yeah. Which maybe gets at the place where so many people are. It's hard to really dive in to the past. And maybe part of this is God saying, yeah, you don't know where you're going, but I do. Right. Because, we have a hopeful direction where we think we're going, and yet only God really knows.
And maybe we can't ever really get there if we're not willing to name where we've been.
There you go.
And so I think that's a part of it for Hagar, is to name, this is where I've been. This is the pain. This is the reality of my life. And it stings and it hurts, but it is what it is. Yeah. It's what's real and what's true. But I just love, I don't know about you, but I just love that God asks questions.
I know.
Right?
I know.
And you started by talking about that idea that questions are, sometimes that's the best thing we can do is ask questions. And it's one of the things God does.
Yeah. And it's not the kind of questions just to get an answer. Like, I think in some ways kids ask questions this way. They ask all sorts of questions. Why does this? Why does this? And I don't know that it's not like they're really just looking for facts.
Right.
Like, it's like, I just wanted to make sure I had that piece of information.
Yeah.
No, it's just very much a wanting to be with somebody, wanting attention, wanting to connect with somebody. And here God asks these questions and doesn't like chastise her. Let me ask you again. Right?
Not at all.
In fact, the question seems to work.
Yeah.
Right. It seems to bring out enough in her for God to use it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I've talked about this before, but I did a study a number of years ago, reading through the Gospels and trying to look at every place Jesus asks a question. It's like over 300.
Yeah.
And all the places he answers questions directly, like even some questions you think he would answer that we would probably want to answer.
Totally.
How do I inherit eternal life?
Yeah.
Right? Like that seems like an important one.
I know that one.
Right?
Yeah, totally.
He doesn't give a direct answer. What does the law say? How do you read it? Yeah, sure. Go do that.
Exactly. I know.
What?
It's hilarious.
But that's a microcosm of his modus operandi in the whole, right?
Yeah.
He continually asks questions and answers, it seems at times, like as few as possible.
Yes. Allowing people to actually do the work of thinking for themselves, not taking away the discovery in a sense.
Yeah.
Actually, I've had conversations like this with professors, with other pastors who have suggested that maybe in the way we teach, that we have taught that, and especially the little bit more modern way of teaching lecture style, that we take away people's ability to discover. And there's something in the discover, in the aha, and like putting the pieces together and going, oh, that's it.
Yeah.
That's somewhere, that's where learning happens.
And that's the
in there.
fun.
That's the fun part.
That's the fun part.
Oh my
That's where you
goodness,
start to light
yes.
up and go, oh, I never saw that
Yes.
before. Or, oh, that's how that connects to that idea.
Yep.
And ooh, yeah.
Yep. Well, if you're ever looking for a way to dive into scriptures more, which I encourage you to think of other, different ways to do it. Like, okay, sometimes right now we're reading through the New Testament as a church. A bunch of us are doing that. You can always jump in on that. But if you're just looking for a way to get into scripture more, looking at the questions of Jesus is a good one. Somewhere I have a journal, which I don't journal a lot, so I should probably put this on my wall to say that I have journaled before.
I have journaled.
I have journaled. No, I have a journal where I wrote down every question, then I tried to get at like a little of how he answers. I didn't tabulate the number of answers. I need to go back and do that, and like which ones are questions and which ones are not.
Yeah.
But it was a really, really fun study.
That's cool.
Of just looking through that, and so it's a fun way to go through the Gospels.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. So God asked this question to this Egyptian pregnant, soon to be single mom who's in the middle of nowhere. And I think he wants her to start hoping for a future. I think he wants her to believe that that's possible, even in the midst of a circumstance that would suggest that it's not. And so I think he's stirring up hope. And as I looked at it, there was 3 ways that he did that. There was a plan that he was inviting her to step into with him. There was a promise that he was inviting her to believe. And the promise is funny, right? I mean, you read through it. It's in verses 10 through 12. And on the surface, you go, gosh, that's not all that much of a promise there, God. Your son shall be a wild donkey of a man, his hand against everyone and everyone's hand against him. And he shall dwell over and against all of his kinsmen. It's like, okay, well, he's going to come out on top, but he's going to have a lot of conflict in his life. Yeah. And he'll be a wild donkey of a man.
I know.
If you're interested, you should go look up the way that the King James translates that.
Really? I can only imagine.
Anyway. But yeah, you go, okay, this is a promise, and it's one that Hagar can hold on to. And it probably meant a lot to her, even if we go, gosh, could have done better than that, right? Yes. But it was something to hold her in the midst of the challenge. So, but in regards to the plan, here's the things that I was thinking about, Josh, as I was writing this message. One, so there's 2 things that stood out. If God has a plan, I don't need to control. And if God has a plan, I don't need to be perfect. Yeah. And I think the way that he interacts with Hagar around both of those ideas really draws out the truth of them if God has a plan. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that part of what she's struggling with at the time there is, it must be that why God, right? So I think that's the right thing, is to get to her to say, no, there is a future, for God to say that, in order to recognize that there is a plan. And the way that works in us, I think is gives people hope, especially in the worst times. Yeah. And I'm assuming that gave her hope. Now, I was processing at the same time, I don't know how this gives her hope, right? Like these words in particular, knowing that he's going to make something of himself, that's great. And yet at the same time, here's, if you go beyond this, God's words were very, came to be very true in a lot of ways. And whether or not it's biologically or more theologically, but the entire, the people of Islam, kind of, they look to Hagar and Ishmael as their theological forebears, right?
Correct. This is a formative story.
Yes.
for them,
for
sure.
Now, the tables get turned in the Quran. Okay, so it's actually, they claim that Ishmael was the chosen son, and it's Sarai and Isaac that are cast out, and so they change it in there. And yet the idea is, though, that here at this point, one is outcast.
Yes.
And God still does a lot with them. Yeah, I don't know what this does, but I love that. I love how you said it, right? What is it now? There's a,
if he has a plan, I don't have to control, and I don't need to be perfect, right? Like, so my imperfections are not going to thwart God's plan.
And even if those imperfections are not of your fault, right?
Correct.
Because here we are, or as you've said, this is a girl who, of no fault of her own, is put in this situation. It's not like she consented to this.
No.
She was a slave.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. And she's, I don't know how old she is here.
Who knows? But, most people think that Abram and Sarai probably purchased Hagar as a slave when they were in Egypt, and it was like, Genesis chapter 12 verses 10 through 20 is when they're sort of in that space.
So I wonder if do they place her as Egyptian?
They do.
Okay.
She's Egyptian.
She's Egyptian.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yep.
There you go. Wow. So I think that's a powerful way to put it, but you don't have to control. So here she is in a place of no control, and maybe that's actually the fact that she can't control is the reason that the Spirit found her. Right. That she's letting go of control.
Yes.
And that's where you can accept God's plan.
I think so. Absolutely. I think so. So my hope was that, like I said, both moms and just disciples in general would be encouraged by that, to go, okay, God's coming to this woman who's at the bottom of society and herself. She's just going, gosh, I've got nothing. And yet he's saying he has a plan even for her. And he's making a promise to be good to her in the midst of all those challenges. So I loved it.
Yep. And what little boy doesn't want to be a wild donkey of a man?
A wild donkey of a man. That's why I got that verse tattooed on my back. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
Yeah, I think we have a couple boys who might be wild.
Yeah, they're wild donkey of boys right now.
They are.
Yeah,
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, that's true. Yep.
Oh man.
So then there's this last section, Josh, and I just want to read this.
Yeah.
And then we can talk about it. But it says, so she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her, "You are a God of seeing." For she said, "Truly here I have seen him who looks after me." And I was struck by the fact, and I wrote it in here, that Hagar, the Egyptian slave, is the only person in the Bible. And so I could be wrong on this, but I think that that's true. The only person in the Bible who gives God a name. Other times he's telling people what his name is. I am Elohim, I'm El Shaddai, I am Yahweh, covenantal God. And yet this time she looks back at him and goes, "You know who you are? El Roy, the God who sees." And we never get an explicit, like, God approved, I approve that name. Right. But we have it in scripture, and he doesn't seem to argue with it. And it's certainly true.
Yes.
And so, for me, it caused all of these questions, like, what would I name God?
Ooh.
And because, and I said this in the message, but I'll just read what I wrote. I said, whatever you choose would actually say much more about your need than it would about the character of God, because it is through our need that we experience God in the deepest of ways. And so my conviction is, Hagar says, "You're the God who sees," because not only does she believe that but what she needs is to be seen.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
She feels invisible.
Oh my goodness. What a and that's where, I mean, that was, you know, the key to this whole message. And I feel like that's a statement that we hear a lot these days. That there are people who just don't feel seen or haven't felt seen and need to. And I think what a great example of our God, who is choosing somebody who doesn't fit the mold. Right? This is not the hero, right?
No.
This is in fact, it wouldn't. This is where the slave mother of the, you know, early child that gets cast away would not even be brought up outside of a biblical text.
Correct.
Right? I mean, this you know, this happened sadly all the time, and we don't know their names.
Yeah.
Because they were not seen.
Yeah.
And here enshrined in Scripture, we've got the name of this woman, and her then naming God.
Yeah.
As at least the first, and if not the only. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. It's striking.
That is striking. And I love that. There's just something about that I love, that God chose to allow a woman in that situation to be that person,
a non-Hebrew, not a descendant or married to Abram.
Yeah.
Woman, slave, socioeconomically, she's at the bottom.
And this is before his whole household commits to following God. So this is not even like a God-fearer Egyptian following Yahweh necessarily. No. It's like she meets him here. Wow.
Yeah, that's the way I read it, for sure.
Yeah.
Because Abram is still very much on a journey.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're right. It's
literally
not
and figuratively.
Abraham that they are following. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Oh wow.
Carolyn had a great comment.
Okay. Let's put that up here.
She said, and try to do something to make themselves seen these days. So I think it was in regards to your comment.
People were saying,
people don't feel seen, and so there's all sorts of strategies that people have to feel seen. Yeah, I would agree with that. I see that often. So, and my conviction is that the fact that God sees should be a great comfort to us, and meaning a strengthening, to be together and fortify. Like it should strengthen us and comfort our souls that God sees us. And I think that's especially, maybe especially true for moms, but it definitely applies.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely does. Well, I mean, let's just face it. Throughout the history of our world, women have been the least seen in our world, right? Now, they've always been seen by God, and that's the unique thing, because I think when we think about the way that we talk about being seen here, it's being seen by certain people in power, right? And unfortunately, all human seeing is limited, right? We can only really have the attention span and the ability to notice, to be invested in a limited amount of people.
Right.
Some can do more than others, but it's all a limit, right? But that's where God is different.
Yes.
And that's where God sees them all, and yet at the same time, it's not like it doesn't undermine the amount of care.
Correct.
Right? The sometimes, we live in a world where quantity and quality are two they're inverse relationships, right? So you can only really have either quantity or quality with humans. But
right.
That's very different with God.
Yes.
And so that quality of relationship that he wants and has with this nobody woman, right, is the same that he wants with all of us.
I love that.
That's really, really.
Yeah. I love that. And yeah, I think one of the reasons I chose to teach this story is because it's just really resonated with me over the last few months, I guess. And just that name, Elroy. God, you're the God who sees.
Yeah.
And I think there's multiple dynamics to that. God, like you see when I'm not following you, right? God, you see when
Yeah.
I am loving in the way that you would want me to love. God, you see the hurt, you see the pain, you see the joy, you see it all. You see it all.
Yeah.
And that's been a huge comfort to me lately and a
Mm.
challenge. And I said a few weeks ago that might be my favorite name for God right now is Elroy. And so I just loved getting the chance to teach through that whole story.
I love it. And I love the ending of this. That I remember thinking, oh, that really could be a whole sermon, at least a sermon kind of
this
sermon
idea
starter.
of the psalm, like where it says, I will instruct you
Okay.
in the way you should go. I will guide you with my eye.
No,
that part?
Well, that too. I forgot about
part?
that. Actually, the just the imagery. It's not a sermon, I guess I shouldn't say, but it's a great sermon illustration. The imagery of parents saying, or no, kids saying to a parent,
totally.
Hey, did you see that? Did you see that? Hey,
Right.
did you see? I think that right there, that hit me. That this then kind of almost ended as a sermon about prayer. But the challenge is that to tell God, do you see?
Yeah.
To open up to him.
Yes.
Because knowing that he does, but being somebody that still wants to bring that to God.
Yeah. Being seen and seeing are two different things.
Yes.
Right. So we can acknowledge that God sees us, but not really look back to him. Right. And so that was part of the invitation, was to go, okay, well, in light of the fact that God's looking at you, look back at him.
Yes.
And I think that's the image in that psalm anyway. I will guide you with my eye. Like, it's look up at me and I'll guide you.
Yep.
But how devastating would it be to know that you're seen by God, but to never look back at him as he looks at you?
Yep.
Yeah. So that was where I wanted to land and end with what I feel like is a beautiful invitation to look back at the God who's looking at us.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I really, really love that. Because that's what our, that's in a sense all we can bring. is coming back to God and saying, now do you see me? Recognizing that he does, and bringing the things in our life, kind of in a sense opening them up into his gaze.
Yeah.
Right.
That vulnerability
that
piece.
Really is. And I love, this isn't the only time that idea is in scripture, right? And I'm trying to remember. I thought it was Habakkuk. We opened with a passage this week in the call to worship.
Yeah, Zephaniah
3. It's 3:17. Okay.
Yep.
I was mixing up that in Habakkuk. All right. I love this. I love this
would
passage.
be like, why don't you see?
I know what's wrong. One of those that you know, one of those minor prophets. That's it. This is such an amazing verse. The Lord your God in your midst, a mighty one who will save. He will rejoice over you with gladness. He will quiet you by his love. He will exult over you with loud singing.
Yeah.
That now, because that gets even more than just seeing you, but that God sings songs over us.
Totally. Yeah.
So cool.
One of the reasons we chose that as a call to worship on Mother's Day was I just imagined that as like the divine lullaby, right? Like how a mom would sing to her kids at night, and lie in bed with them and rub their back, and it just seems like a very maternal act. That God would sing over his people. I just love that.
Yeah.
Oh
man, that is so cool. Well, to all the moms out there, we still honor you. We'll do it again in 360 some days. No, but we do honor you. We're thankful for you, and And yet, like you said, there's a lot of pain out there. And, you know, you as well. It must be a hard day.
It is. It is. And, I wish days like that got easier, as you go on. But they just get different, because every Mother's Day, I'd still love to call my mom,
Totally.
every day I would, but
Totally. Yeah.
So it's an interesting and unique role to have to be very public and, out there on days where you'd sort of rather go, I think I'd love to just go for a walk and spend some time alone thinking, but it's all good. God's grace is sufficient for that. There's a unique grace for leading people in the midst of pain while you're in pain. So,
well, that's where the healing takes place. Oddly, is in that stepping into it, going through it, and I think the message you gave was healing for a lot of people as well. So,
right on. Praise God.
So thanks for that.
Praise God.
Okay, we've got a few things that we want to kind of look forward to.
Yes.
Next. Okay, so one last comment here. Oh, this is good. Truly knowing we are seen, known, and loved by God frees us to rejoice in how God does the same for others. Ooh,
really good.
Oh, that's good. And Carolyn,
that.
What a great point. When we don't think we're loved, we try to hoard love. But when we know we're loved, we allow others to enter into the love. We want people to enter into the love. That's such a good point. That's really cool.
That's cool. Like, do we come at love from a position of scarcity or abundance?
Totally.
That's a great.
Oh man. So speaking of parents and mothering and all that stuff, I mean, and if anyone has been a parent before, you begin with like love, love for your spouse. And then you have this kid and you think, first, how can I love anything anymore? And then you have plenty of room for a kid. And then you think there's another kid comes. If God brings another kid, right? You think, I don't know if I can love a kid anymore. And yet you do.
Right.
You always find room.
Yeah.
It's not like you get to the limit and you say, no, I can't love. And you don't go, well, now you've got half of my love. That's just not the way it works.
Right.
There's always room.
It's true.
For more love. And now imagine that on God's scale, right?
Yeah.
Who, it's beyond us. So, but man, that's really cool. All right. Well, okay. Now we're going to transition a little bit to some things coming up.
Yep. We got a few.
But before we know where we're going, we have to go back to where we were.
You brought that back around.
I did. And I just, well, thank you for this, Luca. We're going to transition into next week. I want to preview some of that and everything. And I think that's going to lead us into our book.
Yes.
But before we do, I have to just give a little highlight for those at home. This was something I got to see today that I was really encouraged by.
Right on.
And
Lay it on us.
I was encouraged by some of our high school students and our just the state of students these days. I think that in our world, it's easy to get depressed with where things are going. And I just want everybody at home to know that there's hope that even for this church is going to continue on. It's in good hands with our younger generations that are coming up. There's some great things happening. I've gotten to jump in and see a bunch of that over the last few months in high school ministry as we've been without a high school pastor, which we have a high school pastor coming now, which is really, really cool. So one thing I got to do today was go to Escondido High School and speak at their FCA.
Nice.
And
that's great.
And it's funny because I gave so Joy Abdemalek, she is the leader of it, the student leader of FCA, right? Which of course she is.
Of course.
So Joy is amazing. And she leads this group. And I've been to a lot of these over the years, right? Tons. And you never know what to expect.
Yeah.
Sometimes you show up and there's 4 kids. This one, I show up and there's like 60 kids there.
Wow.
That's
cool.
They have the culinary arts teacher makes them food every week. I mean,
Bravo.
unreal. I know, this is such a cool thing. And there's all these kids coming out and they're paying attention. They're listening to the gospel as teaching. It was so much fun.
That is so cool.
Now, I did ask my son a few days ago, because my son goes to another school, goes to San Pasqual High School, and he's a part of FCA there. And I said, so what should I talk about?
Mm-hmm.
And so he first says Pearl Jam. And I'm wearing a Pearl Jam shirt. And that's actually why. And I'm like, dude, I don't know if I'm going to talk about Pearl Jam. And then he says, oh, you should talk about that REM song, Losing My Religion. He says it. And I'm like, really? That's a 30-year-old song, Caleb. You do realize that, right? He's like, yes, you should talk about that. And so I thought about it. I said, all right, I'll do it. I'll do it. And so sure enough, I played the song and talked about
that's me in the spotlight, losing my religion.
Right?
Yep.
That's the one. That's the one. It's a great song. But it's been one that I think Christians have had a hard time with, because they're like, I don't want to lose my religion. And so I asked the kids, do you want to lose your religion? And they all said no. And I said, but this is what I said. Actually, I think Jesus came so that you would lose religion.
Right on.
It's because he came to abolish religion, right? You see where I went there?
I like that.
That he turned religion upside down. It was just so. Now that you don't need my talk, but what you do need is to know that there are a ton of kids out there that are pursuing Jesus, and it's really cool. Really encouraging.
Right on, man.
It's really cool.
Right on.
Yeah.
Good work. Very cool.
And speaking of not kids necessarily, but I'm hoping a bunch of our young adults come out this weekend.
Yes.
Or this Wednesday.
A week from today.
But not just young adults, not just our singles, but a lot of the church come out.
Yeah.
Because our topic is going to be singleness.
Singleness. Yeah. It's a great topic.
It really is. In fact, it's going to be on Wednesday, and then you'll follow that up on the following Sunday.
Yep.
With in 1 Corinthians.
Yeah.
There's a lot about singleness.
There is. Yep.
And so you get to go and learn a little bit and then preach about it.
Yep. I'll take notes. Very good notes. Yes. Yes.
No, we're joking, by the way. His sermon is basically done by the time Wednesday night rolls around.
It will be. But
still,
there's always time to add things.
You never know. Or be like, oops.
No,
I don't.
Don't say that.
So we got a guy, Dr. Matt Jensen. He's a professor at Biola University. He's done some speaking on singleness. It was actually difficult. I had to look all over for somebody that has done any speaking at all on this topic.
Okay, cool.
There are some well-known names, but we'd have to fly them out here, which I'd love to do at some point. But I found this guy, Matt, and he's local in Orange County.
That's great.
And was open to come.
Cool.
However, he did have to tell me this. And so just so you know, and I'm sure he'll share this, but he did a lot of writing and speaking on singleness. But then over COVID, he went and got hitched. So now he's married.
That's all credibility.
So, as he said, so he actually was very sweet about it. He's like, I just want you to know, I'm glad to do it. But in case you want someone with more credibility,
that is so funny.
You need to know this about me. But so he lasted some 44 years or something like that. He says,
wow,
as a single man.
Right.
I thought you earned enough credibility.
As long as he wrote the material when he was single.
Yes, that's right.
We'll let it slide.
As long as it doesn't change
much. That how cool. Right on. I'm grateful to have him joining us.
Yeah.
And he's gonna, I hope, stir up a good conversation within our church.
Yes.
Because what marriage is God's design. There's no doubt about that. And his design is clear within Scripture. There's no doubt about that either.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And yet our ability to live in alignment with God's design seems to there seems to be a lot of challenges with that in Scripture. And the way that God interacts with our failure to live in his design, there seems to be some interesting nuance throughout Scripture and the way that we go about that. And so all that to say that some of our view of marriage is less strictly about the Bible than it is about the Romantic era and the way that has influenced us, and we've baptized marriage as a calling for all, when the scriptures would say
No.
it's not necessarily that. And so
Yeah.
we're getting to some passages in 1 Corinthians 7 where Paul's going to say, I wish you wouldn't get married.
Yeah.
And so to have this seminar alongside of that is a really huge benefit that I'm grateful for.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I like this. I think this is going to be great.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm going to be watching online.
From
If you're watching online, I will be there with you. I will be watching it. Well, let's see. Will I be watching it live? It will be about. It might be 5 a.m.
Yeah, if you love Jesus, you'll be up.
That's not that bad, I think. Is it 5? Anyway, I'll figure that out. But I will be watching from Israel.
Yes.
I will be watching where Jesus watched. No, no. This is you guys. This is such a unique thing. I get to go to Israel for the next 2 weeks. So unless we really figure out something virtual, I don't know. We have. I won't be here for
2
the
weeks
next couple of weeks. But yeah, because next week we will be live though. We'll be live. You can go to live.efcc.org and watch on YouTube. I believe it should be on Facebook as well, and then the rebroadcast will be put on the podcast as well. So we'd love to have you join in on this. If you do watch live, you can ask questions. You can go to slido.com and ask your questions. You can even ask some now. If you go to slido.com and type in the numbers 332233.
You got it.
You can begin and preload some questions in there for that night. It's going to be a blast.
It will. I can't wait.
Yeah, I look forward to joining in. If the timing works out, it would be fun to ask some questions.
Yes,
and see if I can. Ryan Lundy will be kind of doing some of the hosting things that I typically do.
Right on.
So he will. And so it was a professor of his.
Oh,
so
cool.
This is the connection. So I found this guy, and then I kind of reached out to Ryan, knowing that he went there. His dad teaches there, all these things. And I said, "Hey, do you know this guy?" And he's like, "Yes, he was my professor." So
nice.
It's gonna be fun.
Very cool.
It's gonna be fun. So, but this coming week, before the seminar, we're talking about
divorce, remarriage, all the things.
And you're gonna give us all the answers. Exactly what to do in every situation.
Yes. I am gonna do my best to teach what I believe 1 Corinthians 7 says.
Okay.
And so Josh is sort of joking that we want to make it black and white.
Yeah.
There's some safety in that. There's uniformity in that can be beneficial at times, but I'm not sure that that's what the scriptures intend to give us in this situation. So we're going to talk about all of that, and would welcome your questions afterwards, or even beforehand if you're interested. But it is a tough topic. I'm just, as I get into it, I'm going, man, it is tough, and to the point where I'm going, all right, I need to finish my message tonight so I can get it to our elders. Yeah. So that they can read it and go, oh, wow, are you guys good with this? This is what I believe this teaches. How do you feel about it? So,
yeah. All right. If that's not a plug, to be there and to listen in or tune in wherever, I don't know what is. So it's a great passage.
Which, by the way, I run my messages by a whole group of people every week.
Yes, he does.
One of them is always, like, one of our elders at least is always reading. And if there's anything that they want to talk to me about, they always do. So that part isn't unique, but it's the finishing it and saying, I want you guys to say yes.
Yeah. Well, okay. This is a debated topic.
Yeah.
And yet in a lot of churches, it has been presented as if there is no debate. Is that a safe way to say this?
Yeah.
And so, so people come to this topic with a lot of different perspectives, lots of them. And in other words, I mean, can I get divorced? Can I get remarried? What do we do when someone gets divorced? I mean, there's a number of these issues. This is tricky.
Yeah,
it is. And so that's wise to to run this by the
and
elders.
I think the comfort I find is that, man, it was tricky for them back then too, which is why they're writing about it and asking Paul about it. And what do we do in these situations? And I guess I find some solace in the fact that, man, we're not the first people to walk down these roads. And while some of the conversation has changed over the last 2,000 years, more of it has stayed the same. And so we'll do our best.
Yep. That's why this has been such a fun series, because 1 Corinthians, Corinth must have been, we probably would feel in some ways very comfortable in Corinth.
Yeah.
Right. In some ways, because of how similar the issues are.
Yeah.
That they were dealing with.
I mean, they were pushing the limits.
Yeah. Maybe even more so. Some ways we would not feel comfortable at all.
It might. Yeah. Yeah. That's true. Yes.
But there's a lot of similarities. All I'm trying to say, I guess that was the wrong, silly way of saying that.
No, there are similar cultures. I understand what you're saying. I was thinking of a specific city that Corinth might be similar to.
Yeah, a lot of things came in my head. Thought, nope, we would not be good about that. But so did you bring a book?
I brought a book.
Okay, tell us, because this is very related to this topic.
It's specifically a book that I've been rereading for next week. It's one that I read and went, this is the best book on divorce and remarriage from a pastoral standpoint that I've ever read. And it draws out things from the text that I just hadn't seen before. So here's the book. It's called Divorce and Remarriage in the Church. It is by David Instone Brewer. It is phenomenal. I wouldn't say it's light reading, but it's not academic in the sense that he's getting into the nitty gritty of the Greek or the Hebrew or anything like that. So it's at a lay level. You don't need to understand the original languages to get a lot out of this book. But if you know somebody who's been divorced, if you have been yourself, my conviction would be this is a great resource that I'd highly recommend. So
now I could see somebody who is in the church and who's gone through divorce feeling like reading a book talking about this could be opening up a wound, right? Do you feel like this is a book that is a gracious approach? Will they feel more grace and love, or what do you think?
Yeah, this book is designed for pastors who want to walk with people in the brokenness of life. And so my sense in reading it was that it is very gracious and even in tone recognizes the pain that surrounds this for every person that's walked through it.
That's good. Well, because let's just be clear. No one likes divorce. I've never met someone who's gone through divorce who's been like, I was really glad I did that, right?
Yeah,
and at the same time,
to do that.
Yeah, had to do that. Yeah,
that was my plan when we got married.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, never.
No one does. And yet, at the same time, if you've gone through that, the church is for you. There's no, I mean, that's what we want. And so, I'd tell you, don't fear this week's message.
Yeah, please
come out. I don't know the message yet, but I have a feeling you're going to feel accepted and loved as you are, and you'll learn about how the scriptures talk about it and what that means for us today. So, right on. All right, man. Well, hey, thank you very much, and thanks for all the hard work on this.
Yeah,
this is. I'm guessing this is a lot more work than a normal message.
Yeah,
which is good.
Yeah, it's good.
Which is good. But
it's good.
And thank you. I will have fun in Israel. The more I look into this, it's like a nonstop. We're just go. I really hope that I can come back, and I'm on a part of a kind of a. I've begun a track to learn how to lead these.
Right on.
And so that's part of what I get to do. And I hope that we can come back and do these again.
Yes.
So I hope that one day we'll be able to lead some teams that can go and go on a pilgrimage together, to actually really learn together, grow together. And so I don't know what to expect yet. Never been, and can't wait to be there. So
right on.
It's going to be good.
Right on. Well, shalom.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, everybody. Well, this has been a fun conversation. Thank you to everybody for joining in. And thank you, Ryan, for taking
Josh.
the time to open up here. And well, our prayer is, as always, is that you would live into the abundant life that God has to you, that you would learn to live in the vital signs of his abundant life that he has for you, because that's what we're doing here, studying life abundant. And many blessings to you, and bless you all. Take care.